Hello there. The Civil War ends today. I'm going to start today by reading with you from the online textbook, and you could just follow along on the screen, that's fine. I think your book does a nice job of describing the surrender of the South at Appomattox. What you need in front of you is your Civil War packet. The first thing we'll do after I'm done reading is fill in the battles chart, and then we will go over the lesson assessment for section 5, which you did a couple weeks ago. You should already have the answers to those questions. I'll go over the answers to those questions with you. So for now, just follow along with me. The fighting ends. By the second week of April 1865, Grant had surrounded Lee's army and demanded the soldiers surrender. Lee hoped to join other Confederates in fighting in North Carolina, but Grant cut off his escape just west of Richmond. Lee tried some last-minute attacks but could not break the Union line. Lee's forces were running low on supplies. General James Longstreet told about the condition of Confederate troops. Quote, "Many weary soldiers were picked up, some with, many without arms, all asking for food." I'm going to scroll past this graphic organizer here. Trapped by the Union Army, Lee recognized that the situation was hopeless. "There is nothing left for me to do but go and see General Grant," Lee said, "and I would rather die 1,000 deaths." On April 9, 1865, the Union and Confederate leaders met at a home in the small town of Appomattox Courthouse, where Lee surrendered to Grant, thus ending the Civil War. During the meeting, Grant assured Lee that his troops would be fed and allowed to keep their horses, and they would not be tried for treason. Then Lee signed the surrender documents. The long, bloody war had finally ended. Grant later wrote that he found the scene at Appomattox Courthouse more tragic than joyful. Grant said, "I felt sad and depressed at the downfall of a foe who had fought so long and valiantly, and had suffered so much for a cause, though that cause was, I believe, one of the worst for which a people ever fought." As General Lee returned to his troops, General Grant stopped Union forces from cheering their victory. "The war is over," Grant said with relief. "The rebels are our countrymen again." The Civil War had deep and long-lasting effects. Almost 620,000 Americans lost their lives during the 4 years of fighting. Now I'm going to switch to the battles chart. Now I turned that into a PowerPoint on my computer to take you through it. You'll want to turn to the battles chart that's in your packet. Let's fill in the information that we just read. So the date is April 1865. It is in Virginia. I showed you a map on a different screencast showing you how the Wilderness Campaign kind of took Grant all around Richmond, but he didn't get to Richmond. It eventually leads to Appomattox Courthouse, which is a town just west of Richmond. This is Grant versus Lee again, and it's a Union victory. Lee was forced to retreat from Richmond when Grant advanced. So that piece of the Anaconda Plan of getting to Richmond is finally going to happen because General Lee retreats from the town. There was never a battle to take over Richmond. The Confederate forces had already evacuated the city, and basically the Union is just going to be able to walk right in and take over. The Confederates were trapped and forced to surrender, as we just read, on April 9th, 1865, almost exactly 4 years to the day that it began at Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor. And that's that. So if you need to press pause to finish copying that down, you can do that at this point. If you're ready, or when you're ready, then you can turn back to the lesson assessment that we did before we left for our quarantine. It looks like this. You answered 2 questions after reading section 5. Number 1, what were the terms of the surrender? Well, Grant promised the Confederates would be fed, that they could keep their horses, they would not be tried for treason. So that is a very big deal. He is showing forgiveness. He has been told by his boss, President Lincoln, to show forgiveness. President Lincoln does not want to punish these people. He just wants them to come back to the Union and for everything to go back to being the way it was before, except without slavery. So he simply just told them to go home. And that even includes Robert E. Lee himself. There will be no trials for treason. There will be no executions. There will be no punishments. Number two, what do these terms reveal about his character and his feelings for General Lee? Well, some of the quotes that I just read to you really do unveil his feelings for Robert E. Lee and the Confederates in general. I wrote that he felt empathy for the defeated and showed grace when he said, "The rebels are our countrymen again." And I feel like he had great respect for his counterpart, Robert E. Lee. The fact that he allowed him to keep his sword is a grand gesture that shows this. So that's how I answered those questions. You may have answered them a little differently, but that is the overall feeling. At the end of the Civil War, the Union is relieved that it's over, but they're by no means excited or happy that they defeated the Confederates because they are their countrymen and we need to put the pieces back together again, and it's not going to be easy. Everybody can agree on that. Now you finally get to find out what the effects of the war are. At the very beginning of the chapter, we made our predictions, so you'll want to turn to those pages because the next part of our lesson will reveal what the realities were. You get to check your predictions to see if you were right. I'll see you there.